And welcome to the March meeting of the West Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first order of business is the approval of the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hearing no motion carries. Public comment on matters not on the agenda. If there's anyone that wishes to speak on such matters, please come forward. Not seeing any, we will move forward to approval of the February 21st, 2019 minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Report out of closed session. Council.
The board did meet in closed session this morning to confer with legal counsel on anticipated litigation identified on the agenda, and no action was taken.
Thank you. Review of monthly and year-to-date revenue and expenses.
Good morning, members of the board. I'll be reporting out on revenue and expenses for January 2019. In Fund 870, the beginning balance was approximately $6.5 million. We received $2.4 million from flood assessments. Expenses were $172,000. $150,000 of that was transferred from 870 to 871 for a contract amendment. And the ending cash balance for 870 was $8.7 million. In Fund 871, the beginning cash balance was negative $7.6 million. Our revenue was $2.7 million. $2 million that was an appropriation for design services for the federal project. Expenses were $8.2 million, and the ending cash position for 871 was negative $13.1 million. Looking to the year-to-date position, along with the remaining advanced state funding, the combined cash position of 870 and 871 was approximately $16 million. As of March 13, 2018, the agency's combined cash position is approximately $15.4 million. That concludes my report. Do you have any questions for me?
Are there any questions?
No.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Item number 6 is the consent agenda.
I'll move the agenda.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to move the consent agenda, which is composed of just item 6. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 7, consideration of Resolution 1903-1, entering into a land design agreement between the State of California and WSAFCA.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. The item for consideration is a local design agreement between WSAFCA and the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. This is part of a series of actions that the board has undertaken and will be undertaking as we shift into the federal levee improvement program project. As a sidebar, this agreement is with the Central Valley Flood Protection Board as opposed to DWR because the Central Valley Flood Protection Board is the signatory for agreements with the federal government. So in our construction funding agreements with DWR, these agreements with the federal government, these three-party agreements, et cetera, will be with the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. We've received $8,000 in funding, or the Corps has been allocated $800,000 in funding, and we've allocated a budget of $2 million to start PED on the initial first two segments of the federal project, and also the board has approved amendments to the construction funding agreement to allow DWR and the Central Valley Flood Protection Board to advance local cost share, all with the goal of fast-tracking the design of these first two increments so that when construction funding comes available, we'll be ready to roll. The board was originally, we told the board, our board, that the companion agreements would go to the Central Valley Flood Protection Board tomorrow. Because of the way the month of March works, there's five Fridays in the month. It's going to the Central Valley Flood Protection Board on the 29th. We don't anticipate any issues at this time. The DA with the Corps is still with the district division office, and district is engaging district to keep the DA on track. We expect to have all the agreements, the three-way agreements, to the Central Valley Flood Protection Board and ready for execution on the 29th. If there are any changes, they won't be material. We don't expect any material changes to the agreements. And as soon as all the agreements are ready to go, we'll be chasing board members down for signatures. So with that, I don't have anything else to report about it, and I take any questions you have.
Are there any questions?
No, not for me.
Okay, so explain again the core role in this agreement is between us and the state in advancing through. Is it going to be a similar design process as to what we had on our EIP projects? With
The actual design and engineering?
Yes,
Yes.
okay, and with the core keeping basically the same role they had before, whereas in the PED funds do what, Greg?
It'll be a little bit different.
Yeah.
Traditionally, the Corps would lead design, and we would participate as a reviewer of the design. The roles would kind of be switched from EIP projects or the UFA projects we led, they reviewed. Under a normal Corps process, they would design, we would review. However, we have, in order to be able to keep pace with other projects, we have the agreement with the district that we will lead the design. So in practicality, it'll be much like it was under the early implementation project program, at least at this point up to the 65% design milestone, in which case the plan now is we would turn it over to the Corps to then complete, and then we would become in a more of a reviewer role.
And their participation is based on the PED money they've been allocated and are going to be allocated as we go forward.
Correct, and so that's another reason why we want to lead design, because right now they only have $400,000 that's been allocated. There's a proposed additional $400,000. Either way, that doesn't add up to a lot of participation. So if we want to get this design moving quickly, somebody else with some money is going to have to lead it.
And if we want to bring it forward for construction with some funds, we need it as well. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. With that, I'll make the motion that we approve Resolution 190301.
I'll second that.
Been first and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hearing no opposition, motion carries. Item 8 was safeguard project updates.
Morning, Chair, members of the board. Just wanted to go over a few of the items that are contained in your program update. Our construction team, along with our construction management team, is currently working through closeout documents for the Phase 2 project, the levee project. There's still some activities that we anticipate happening as the weather improves, some erosion repair as needed, primarily due to the rain that we received. And just as a note, by the way, I wanted to point out, in case somebody else points it out to you, there's a relatively large erosion rill at the top of the water side of the levee segment where segments F and G join. It's a fairly big knuckle right there in terms of how wide it is, and it's on the water side, and it is still probably, 30 to 40 feet away from the actual levee prism, so there's no safety hazard at this point, but we do need to repair it.
Not 30, 40 feet away from the prism, but 34 feet away from the other side of the levee. It's not encroaching in the levee prism, but.
Did you catch that? Mm-hmm. All right. So anyways, it doesn't propose a safety condition, but we will have the contractor address it when they do some additional warranty work. Obviously, there's the borrow site restoration that still needs to take place, and staff is doing an analysis now on the amount of material and then what process we're going to go through to get that done. There's also some questions on where the material will come from and whether or not we need to amend our environmental document to support that as well. So that could, depending on what kind of amendment needs to be done, that could cause some additional time before we can go do the work. On the cultural resources side for the levee project, we're working closely with the Corps and our cultural team, GEI, to develop the final inventory package, final report under Section 106, and then also coordinate the reburial of some of the cultural items that were collected during the course of the project. On to Phase 3, the restoration project. The design was completed about 60 days or so ago. Bids were released a couple weeks ago. Bids are due on next Thursday, March 28th. And we anticipate bringing an item before the board next month to award a contract for the restoration phase. And the plant procurement is still going along well, and we anticipate that we will have our 80,000 trees, shrubs, and other material ready to go in the fall. We do expect the contract to begin in the summer. Planting will likely not occur until the fall, but there will be some grading, also irrigation system that will have to be likely be installed in some areas. And with the high river conditions and how long during the season that river level stays up is likely could impact anyways the timing of getting out there and actually doing some work. So we'll have to see how that goes. On the North Area project closeout, staff had a good meeting with DWR last week. We have resolved the flowage easement issue on the rivers. We're waiting for a letter from DWR just confirming that so we can wrap that up. And in the meantime, we are working with the DWR staff to put together, make sure they have all the documentation they need so that we can do proper closeout for the and release of the retention from the construction contracts. So we're hopeful that that's going to happen over the course of the next couple, 2-3 months, and that represents about $2 million in retention that we're looking for. On to the federal project. So as the board's aware, we're kind of tee up all of the agreements for design, the DA with the Corps, the local DA with the state, so that we can start participating on meaningful scoping of the first design project. As the board's aware, it's those 2 small segments along the Yellow Bypass. From a core budgeting standpoint, they only have $400,000. There's a line item in the budget for an additional $400,000. We'll be working with our lobbyists and folks back in DC to try and get that number bumped up to, at a minimum, full PED for the Corps, which is a total of $4 million. And then depending on these troublesome 1043 guidelines, which have yet to be released, and when they do get released, the content, what they actually contain, if it seems like a viable alternative for project implementation, then we will likely make a recommendation to the board that we proceed kind of in a full court press to lobby for West Sac being a project to implement under the 1043. There's a lot of reasons why we think that would be a good alternative for project implementation. I think number one, it kind of gets us to the front of the line in terms of our BCR, becomes less of a deciding factor and more about the ability of a non-federal sponsor to implement a project. Also, the district is fairly resource constrained right now with the $1.8 billion worth of projects they're charged with constructing over the next 4 to 6 years. It's going to be very difficult for them to assign resources to add our project to that list. So I think under the 1043 program, where the federal funds are, if you will, granted to the non-federal agency, and we lead it, we can keep pace just fine with what they're doing. Also, if the 1043 program is initiated like it was for other projects a couple of years ago, where project was authorized in the work plan for construction with an asterisk that they were eligible to participate in the 1043 program. That project, another project ultimately did not participate, but the funding didn't go away. They were still able to move forward with construction. So if they follow a similar path for designating projects eligible for 1043, and ultimately we decide it isn't a good fit, the funding's there for construction, we can go forward with a traditional path with the Corps. Either way, it gets us to construction. I think, from my own personal perspective, I think we'd be better served doing it ourselves. Otherwise, it's just going to take a long time to get our projects going with what the district is trying to accomplish. Earlier this week, I was working with both of our federal lobbyists to complete budget request forms for our congressional delegates, Feinstein, Harris, and Mitsui. Those forms have all been submitted, and we're submitting requests under two parallel tracks. One to get the balance of design funds, full PED, and then a separate request that combines the balance of design funds and the first construction contract amount as a separate construction request. And that's just kind of give a placeholder there in case the 1043 program materializes and is a good option for us. Under traditional funding, the Corps will likely not, we would not likely receive any money for construction until we were wrapping up design, and under traditional Corps funding, that wouldn't be until 2021. But we're putting our marker out there now, and hopefully things line up. And, I think just wanted to report out that while back in D.C. for the legislative summit, I was contacted by and was able to meet with Congresswoman Mitsui's new legislative assistant, and was able to brief her on the West Sacramento project, the work that we've done in the past, where we currently sit in terms of federal funding and project implementation, and where we're looking to go. She has also met with with Mike Strawn, our federal lobbyist, and who's carried the same conversation with her and reinforce our program. I think the next, there may be an opportunity, especially if the 1043 guidelines come out and they look favorable for staff, myself, to perhaps go back to D.C. once again in advance of cap to cap, right at the start of the hearings for the various appropriations committees for energy and water, to lobby for our 1043 program. I think we have a very good story to tell. We've told it a little bit, but we haven't really focused on wanting to be the lead in project delivery. And I think there's a strong case to be made for West Sacramento as one of the best candidates, if not the best candidate in the nation, to implement a federal project. So if things line up, then I will likely be going back to D.C. In advance of cap to cap and make our message known. And then we're also prepping for, working with the flood team and prepping for the cap to cap trip in May. And I think that's about all of the items that I wanted to go over. I'd be happy to answer any other questions the board has.
Questions? Keep your bags packed. I think there's some key things coming up here, in the next few months that, we can thread the needle, and depending on where that 1043 program goes, could be good news, so. Okay, thank you, Greg, very thorough. Director's comments, anything today?
No.
I don't even have anything to say, other than go pack, meeting's adjourned.
That's right. So I went to college with